Yeah, this is a pretty crazy article, but they worded it. It says the IMF wants to use digital footprints of customers' online activities, which basically amounts to social credit scoring, finding out what your likes, dislikes, who what your opinions are, what kind of lifestyle you live. Are you a hunter? Are you a farmer? Are you both? So they want to see your online activities to assess your credit worthiness, meaning that if they don't like your behavior, they will cut off your credit. So if you're a farmer, you're not going to be going and using your credit cards down to buy a bunch of grain and fix your tractor or any of that stuff.
And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, deep in the heart of our planet or above our planet, off-world, welcome to everybody. What a strange difference 7 days has made to the workings in the cogs of narratives across the planet. So we're going to talk about a few things tonight. And Ransom, I hear you giggling in the back, and you know how it is. There's more control and more control. And the colder it gets, the less food we're going to be able to grow reliably. The more governments are going to clamp down because they're going to try to control the masses before they get unruly, and that's a kind word. Because the lack of food and the food price increases. So you can see the lockdowns are going to come first to control people's access to food because of this same cold and this grand solar minimum on these multi-thousand-year cycle we're slipping back into. So Ransom, welcome tonight, man. How do you think the world's spun in the last 7 days? Taking a lot of real strange turns, I do believe.
I think so, but they're strange turns that we kind of predicted. It's so weird to just see everything you come right out in the open and start happening. I did a 420 TV news this morning, and the main subject there was food price increase, food shortages all across the board, crop losses. The insurance companies aren't paying out on the losses, so farmers are going broke. They're going to be losing their farms due to not working because of COVID, or their workers couldn't show up because of the COVID. It's just on and on and on. It's rainfall, flooding, freezing, fires, and pandemic, all leading up to the same thing, which is no food on the shelves, and what little bit of food will be there will cost you an arm and a leg, literally. It's just a massive push for a change of reality, the Great Reset. The only problem is that they're making up fairy tales for us to believe so that we're preparing for all the wrong things. You should be preparing for your family having enough supplies to fix things, maintain things, have water, have food. And I'm not talking about for a decade. I'm talking about for hundreds of years, because there's like a math formula. I was talking about it this morning. It's not just the storable foods that you need, but you got to estimate how many years you're going to live, how many years that you may have hard times where you don't get any other resources other than what you've saved. So years may be thin, you maybe eat more, and then you got to factor in everybody's lifespan to your children and then count that up. And we're talking about like 300 or 400 years worth of food for just a small family. And that's just, covering your butt where you have everybody has a few mouthfuls in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. And believe me, if you think you're going to be doing all kinds of stuff without proteins, nutrients, and calories, you have another thing coming. And unfortunately, this whole food crisis resembles what they do to a country before they invade it. So you got to ask yourself, why is the whole world going to deal with lack of nutrition, food shortages, and outrageous prices on the food there if the whole entire world is not being invaded by some kind of force? And I say that force is here at your doorstep. Happy birthday.
Well, more like Happy New Year, Chinese. By the way, it is the year of the metal ox. And you know that saying, bull in a china shop? Well, that's pretty much the energy that rules the ox year. But with metal, it's even, it's a conductor of electricity, and it's even more sharp. The metal ox year is a bull in a china shop on an electrical current. So depending on how your sign mixes with that, a goat or something, another horse, whatever, those other farm animals, they butt heads with the ox. The rat jumps on tops and rides the ox. Think about that, and then go back to the festivities. And, you just mentioned something, you can feed yourself and eat a couple mouthful of food. But think about the holidays that we've so much taken for granted. Now it's just a marketing scheme. Those holidays really meant something back in the day. And when I say back in the day, I'm only talking 100 years ago and prior to that. They saved up their entire year's stocks for when they knew the spring was coming back so they could gorge themselves as much as they could to try to put the extra nutrients in to survive the rest of the winter. This is the kind of thing that we have lost the sacred reverence for the food in the holiday season. That hundreds of years of food, it's not like you're going to store hundreds of years of food. You're going to have to learn how to grow it, bring those vegetables or whatnot, pumpkins, anything to seed, and then continue the second, third generation, sculpt your wild forest so you can walk through and grab and understand what the wild foraging possibilities are around your area like the Native American Indians did. That's how you're going to survive. And you're going to need people to do it in a community of people you can trust. People are going to freak out. I know there's going to be nervous breakdowns, but do the best you can with the people around you.
But, I have to argue with you just a little bit about a topic here, because I know you're not a fan of global warming idea. However, I want to show you guys this article right here, which proves that global warming is a threat, and it's a threat to you and me. Because the weather is getting colder, that proves that global warming is here to stay, because global warming morphed into climate change. So now we're in cooling times, and I think they would have to admit that I was kind of being sarcastic. Obviously, cold is causing all kinds of damage everywhere, and you were just talking about the weather's about to change and get even colder and push further down south, which is kind of odd. And I was talking about this morning. I don't know how far back you can remember, and there's always been freezes in Florida that's messed up the oranges. It just wasn't so often that, like in the past couple decades, I mean, think about it. How many times did you see an article saying that, well, it froze with freakish cold weathers, messed up the oranges and all the other citrus in Florida, and the iguanas are falling out of the trees and yada, 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 which is also a funny thing because they talk about the number of food pantries and other resources are dwindling in Florida, but at the same time, they have, python constrictors and other invasive species of snake and a bunch of iguana that they could be, I'm not saying to go out and hunt them and eat them, but I have a brother that evidently chases them down, skins them, and throws them right on the barbecue grill and says they are quite delicious. So maybe people might start looking for protein in new areas they never thought they would before. But believe me, Pleistocene men of different kinds were eating all kinds of animals and finding new nooks in the environment to eat. So what do we do if things get so cold that you just really can't grow outside? And I think you talk about a lot, which is you're going to have to resort to indoor growing.
Where we are coming into a real food insecure time. And for those of you that follow my work on Adapt 2030, you know that from this year forward, with these planets lining up into this second magnetic field out in the outer solar system, the weather's going to get more bizarre each seasonal change. But the Great White Rain, for those of you, the Seminole Indian, they used to talk about this. And this is circa 1600, 1500, Ponce de Leon kind of, if you believe the Ponce de Leon myths and legends of struggling through Florida looking for the fountain of youth and whatnot, that time frame. 1600s and prior, 1500s, 1400s. Seminole Indians termed this thing called the Great White Rain, Maunder minimum, when it would snow in the Everglades and it would snow in Florida. And, there were even accounts of it froze solid water down in Cuba. So we know it does get colder down that way. And those iguana, they are delicious, and you should hunt them because they're an invasive species. And along with those pythons, they're an invasive species as well. Those eggs that are in the python, if you can get them before they lay the eggs, super delicious to cook those up. But what kind of food sources are we going to do? Because, to understand, you are not going to be able to grow enough to even feed one person in your house. And I've come to the realization trying to do grow trays, yeah, you can grow enough to keep yourself lightheaded and alive. When you get real hungry and you get kind of lightheaded and whatnot, you could stay at that level of growing your own food in your house, unless you get super high tech and you got a setup that I haven't seen except some commercial things in Singapore or maybe some, NASA setup. Otherwise, growing inside to have enough food for yourself in like a 1,200 square foot house is not going to be a realistic thing, especially if you have 2 kids and a wife and you got 4 people in there. You're going to have to consider adding extra space to the outside of your house and ringing around your house with greenhouses or whatever, something like this. Now, I may say very rudimentary kind, just putting up some extra 2x4s and then covering that with 6 mil poly so you can get an extra grow space outside. But we're coming into some real challenges right now. I mean, significant society reset challenges. And you see everything marching forward from the Great Reset financially. This whole article I wanted to talk about too, the International Monetary Fund. Okay, this is the IMF. This is the central bank to the central banks. And then the Bank of International Settlements is one step above the IMF. So the IMF is a client of the BIS. The BIS is the settlement bank for all central banks across the planet, and all these international organizations with fiduciary responsibilities also reports to the IMF, and there's that chain of command up the monetary ladder. So the IMF is so far removed from you and I, it's like 16 steps up above your regular bank that you would walk to in your neighborhood. But here's this headline, caught me off guard. I knew something was very strange about this. And Ransom, I want to get your ideas here. The IMF wants to use digital footprint of all customers' online activities to assess credit worthiness. You and I. Now, what does the IMF have something to do with you and I? Except they're going to be setting up the social credit score on a global thing, just as you talked about the global technocracy. Well, the International Monetary Fund moving in to try to get a digital footprint of individuals. When they are so far above even the government level, governments come begging to the IMF. That's how far above they are. And they want to track you and I to see our credit worthiness. Where's the disconnect there, Ransom? I don't get it unless they're going to try to unveil a full-on global technocratic / transhumanist. Of course, they're going to try to augment you with tech. Why do you think the IMF's looking to try to track everybody on the planet to see if they're going to be credit worthy? That means that they're moving to a new system then. Because the old system works fine with your credit worthiness right now, the way you're tracked. Do you pay your bills on time? Do you have a job? X, Y, Z, whatever, to get a loan. So whatever's happening now, this seems to be, the old system is gone because they're moving to an entirely new system if they're going to track everybody on the planet at that above governmental level, on the global level.
Yeah, this is a pretty crazy article, but they worded it. It says the IMF wants to use digital footprints of customers' online activities, which basically amounts to social credit scoring, finding out what your likes, dislikes, who you, what your opinions are, what kind of lifestyle you live. Are you a hunter? Are you a farmer? Are you both? So they want to see your online activities to assess your credit worthiness, meaning that if they don't like your behavior, they will cut off your credit. So if you're a farmer, you're not going to be going and using your credit cards down to buy a bunch of grain and fix your tractor or any of that stuff. And then right here, this is worded perfectly, talking about people warned for a long time, in which a system of government controls every aspect of the citizens' lives. Every citizen would have to rely entirely on government to survive in this system. And what is that system? Well, it's complete control of every kind of currency that there is, which means that they control every aspect of your life, because you can't do anything without some kind of monetary value unless you create and make every single thing yourself. And I was talking about this morning, we're going to have to form our own circles of people that trade things like colloidal silver, food, etc., products that we're making, leather people make, whatever it is. But you know that the government is going to want a piece of that pie like they always have. And the International Monetary Fund, which, by the way, wants to change over the entire world's monetary system into a cryptocurrency, not unlike Bitcoin, except for they control it. And I'm showing everybody this article right here, Bitcoin to come to America's oldest bank, BNY Mellon. So the custody banks plan to eventually treat digital currencies like any other asset. It always goes back to the central banks because they make the money. They don't need money. They control you with the money, and you need the money.